Today we're going to be dissecting a Bill Maher video that he posted the other day, and honestly I think this is just a sign for the times and how terrible this is doing for him. But I really just want to cover this to show any of why all of his points are terrible. So we're going to dissect this like it's a frog in 6th grade science class. Not really my forte of a video, but we got to do this.
And finally, new rules since yesterday was Israel's birthday. Having become a nation on May 14th, 78 years ago, everyone must either wish her a happy birthday or admit they're anti-Semitic. Now, it's everyone's right in a free country to be anti-Semitic, but enough with hiding behind Israel or Zionism or Netanyahu. If you think, as so many do now, that when it comes to human rights, Israel is the monster country of all time, you either don't read or you don't care about your own hypocrisy. Because there are so many worse places. But that's where we are these days. No Jews, no news. Haha. But China, Russia, the Sudan, Iran, Myanmar, Haiti, the Congo, North Korea, all way worse.
Okay, 30 seconds or so to unpack first. Imagine saying that if you don't support American Independence Day, you're anti-Semitic or racist, which is just, but obviously is looking for a joke. And so that's why he said it, ha ha, ha ha, had to force from the crowd, had to try to cue them on. When it comes to Israel not being the monstrous human rights Frankenstein is made out to be, it definitely is. But compared to other countries, there's worse ones going on, and it's in the top 20 or so. Yeah, I would agree with that. And sure, you could say that, all these same people should be talking about those things, but where you're wrong there? When it comes to Russia or China or Libya or Yemen or Sudan, right? Myanmar, we're not funding those, but we fund Israel. And the demolitions, the bombings, the brutality, the occupation for 80 years, the M16 rifles, how do they get those? The bombs that we fund, that we have charities here and nonprofits here that send money to the illegal settlements, that build illegal settlements. You have pastors like John Hagee that send money that get their churches and their people. Like, you have no idea what you're talking about here to say that the people that are being inconsistent are the ones pointing out the one thing that they fund. And some of us do try to point to those other places when we can.
Way worse. And that's how you know it's anti-Semitism. It's the inconsistency. People talk about Jews these days like something out of Stormfront. Except it's not Stormfront. It's an editor from the American Prospect, which is a venerable liberal publication that launched the careers of journalists like Ezra Klein. And yet no one blinks when one of their editors says, Israel is a brainwashed, psychopathic death cult that might need to be nuked to save the human race. Uh-huh.
Israel is a place with a brainwashed, psychopathic death cult. And you know what the thing I disagree with there is that it should be nuked, because there are, I'm not even going to say millions, but hundreds of thousands of good people there, genuinely good people. And that's the situation Israel is in. People who don't see the serious real issue here, and it's the indoctrination, the ideologue, the radical belief, and the way that the school systems teach about Arabs, Muslims, teach about the War of Independence. It's about the Bible. It's about the Torah. It's about the direct way that these things cause and affect what we're seeing and what we have seen for 8 generations, if you want to count the Nakba, 750,000 people displaced.
يا الله خافوش من الله الله مش للجميع
تبع مين هذا
الله
اسمع ليش تضغط هذا الارض تبعك
تبعي
تبعك
تبعي ولادتي 15 نفر ذكورة وصبيان بنات وولاد وما لهم مش الا الله رزقتنا على هالزيتونات يعني لما تاخذوهن وتحطوا فيهن دور وين نروح احنا وين نعيش في دور نروح في قضا يحملنا هذا الزيتونات مدارنا وهذا بصحيش هذا يخبط فيها خطر
استنى
نعم وين ندور وين نعيش بدنا نعيش احنا نخارة بدنا نعيش
And if you want to just talk about the settler West Bank taking of homes, 4 decades, 40 years of it being enabled and allowed by the Israeli government, only letting it get to the point where it is now. The only way it could get to the point where it is now. Imagine if Americans just started hopping the border. Imagine if Americans just started hopping the wall, going into Mexico, putting up American flags. Then you see tanks and Apache helicopters that show up and are like, yeah, this is our land now. And, you start building roads and shit, and you slowly do that, taking over Mexico. You'd surely get some Texans who'd support that shit. But you'd also have a lot of people on the left that are thinking cautiously, like, this is really bad. Our neighbors are not going to like the fact that we're doing this. They're going to rise up against us, especially if they don't even have rights in their own country at that time. Like, holy.
People say the left and the right can't agree on anything these days. Well, there is this one thing they agree on. Right-winger Tucker Carlson has Nick Fuentes and Holocaust deniers on his podcast and wonders along with them who really was the bad guy in World War II. And the New York Times has on their podcast super leftist Hassan Piker, who they call a progressive mind, and who says Zionists should be treated the same as Nazis, which I assume means hung at Nuremberg. That's what progressive is now? I guess so. The kids are sure into it. They went nuts last year at Coachella for Kneecap. That's the name of an Irish rap group, as if Ireland hasn't suffered enough. Their stage set is a sign that says, "Fuck Israel." And then they send a beach ball around the crowd. Again, ha-ha. Because again, Israel is the only country in the world doing anything bad.
Go watch the Daryl Cooper, Tucker Carlson interview. Dude is not a Holocaust denier. He's not. This is just blatant smearing from Bill Maher. Just watch a 2 or 3 hour podcast interview yourself. Zionists should not be hung at Nuremberg. What Bill Maher is doing here is trying to generalize all Zionists to scare you. Hassan's Piker quote is, they should be treated the same way that rabid effing neo-Nazis should be treated. Which, yes.
A New York Times op-ed on Israeli sexual violence against Palestinians is getting a lot of attention online. In the column, American journalist Nicholas Kristof calls out Israel's use of rape and sexual violence against Palestinians. He goes on to detail harrowing stories that he heard from 14 Palestinian victims who were assaulted by Israeli soldiers, settlers, security agents, and prison guards. But none of this is new. Israel's systematic use of rape and sexual violence against Palestinians, including children, has been widely reported by international rights groups and media. And it is often a subject of debate.
להכניס מקל לרקטום של בן אדם, זה לגיטימי? כן, אם הוא נוח'בה, הכל לגיטימי לעשות. אוקיי, הכל.
Discussion on television.
כלב הזה, זה ג'אנגו, איתי בכל פעילות, איתי במילואים, היה לי קצת בנוח'בות בסט תימן, עשה הרבה.
תגיד דברים ש...
And even comedy material.
סיפור אחי שהתעללנו ברקטום של פעיל חמאס. זה הסיפור. וצלצלו? מי ענה?
ואתה הבחור עם האייפון שהכניסו לו לישבן, הנוח'בה, וכולם הייתה מעורב באירוע הזה?
This time, however, it was reported by the New York Times, America's paper of record that has time and again overlooked and cast doubt on Palestinian narratives. Israel was quick to react. Official Israeli accounts and pro-Israeli figures slammed the piece, flooding social media feeds with criticism of the article, its author, and the publication. Israel's foreign ministry accused Kristof of blood libel, of inversing reality and spreading baseless lies. Israel's ambassador to the US, Michael Leiter, also accused Kristof of lying.
And by the way, this isn't the first time the New York Times has disproportionately bashed Israel. Oh, it's an addiction. This is characteristic of the same paper that disseminated baseless accusations of starvation.
While Israel denies accusations of sexual violence against Palestinian prisoners, the government has not allowed the Red Cross to inspect the conditions of detainees in Israeli prisons for years. And if they do make it out of detention, inmates come out looking like this. Israeli soldiers were even caught on camera gang raping and torturing a Palestinian prisoner in the notorious Sde Timan detention facility. And while Ambassador Leiter claims that
any complaint of unlawful conduct by Israeli authorities should be submitted to investigative bodies. And as is customary in a democratic society, those complaints will be reviewed thoroughly.
The soldiers from Israel's Unit 100 returned to reserve duty after charges against them were dropped. In fact, solidarity protests took place when the soldiers were detained for questioning. Meanwhile, the whistleblower who leaked the video was arrested, and no internal military investigation into the incident has been carried out. Instead, one of the soldiers, Maher bin Shitrit, has garnered a large online following.
إلى واحد بده يخط رجله هون بقول لكم من هون اليهودي ولا كاتين ولا عكيد ولا إشي جايز عليكم نووي من الصغير لكبير نحرقكم دولتكم ولا واحد ياخد القدس.
And made multiple appearances on primetime television where he is sometimes introduced as a hero.
People who go to protest and say that the New York Times article about dogs raping people in prisons was blood libel and they should fire that guy. Yeah, they should have some type of trial. Maybe not hung, but these people are psychopaths. They're supporting rape. They're supporting any of these things because the people doing it are the good guys. And they're not the good guys. Now, look, I don't know much about Kneecap. I don't know much about Ireland. I understand the point he's trying to make is they're talking about such a serious situation and they toss a beach ball around. You're at concerts. That's what you do for concert goers. Come on, Bill Maher. You've been to some concerts. You're 3-4 times my age. But what's important to talk about here that I could is that Ireland's deeply rooted history against colonialism and imperialism helps the Irish people understand what's going on over there. That is a place where they are way more tapped in and aware of what's going on in Israel and Palestine compared to us. And so the people there, because of their own history, understand the importance it has for the people living in Palestine. And that what's going on over there is so much worse than the things that we deal with here. And so they have an eye out that way to see what's going on. But I do know why this ended up on our radar in the last 2 years with the escalations of the carpet bombing of Gaza and the stealing of homes in the West Bank.
I see why the meathead manosphere and the Code Pink people are on the same page, because they both went to high school in America and they don't know anything.
I didn't realize that we learned these things in high school. I didn't realize that the people that don't teach us about what happens in 1947 or 48 because it would affect how some potential Israeli school kids would be bullied by their classmates, so they don't teach it because it would ostracize them. And yet me as a German, I didn't get that same treatment when it came to Holocaust teachings. We outright scared everybody with what we showed the German people doing. Me get names like Schittler with my last name Schiller. And I don't want to be misinterpreted in any way, because for the record, it should be taught appropriately. We should obviously hold back in teachings a bit, but we should be finding ways to teach children the truth. When we talk about Germany in the 40s, when we talk about what Hitler did, it's appropriate to talk about it the way I was taught. I just think we should do the same for other situations, for what we did in the Congo, for what we in France did in the Congo, for what Britain did to India, for what Britain did to China, for what we did to Palestine right after Germany and the 40s. I just think that we should teach genuinely. If we're going to, we shouldn't pick and choose. But clearly we protect some communities more than others. That's the point that I'm expressing. So we didn't get that same treatment. I didn't hear about these things in high school, but when I lost my job and I had more free time, you know what happened? I had more time on this computer, and I was seeing what's going on in Israel and Palestine in 2024, and the brutality, the onslaught, the literal no mercy to children or animals. Here's 2 clips from just this week. I know this is off topic, but this is just this week. Both of these clips. From settlers, people that Bill Maher here probably supports, doesn't talk any issue about, never talks about the Palestinian plight over there. But you know what he does talk about? The people who support the Palestinians getting traumatized, and that people angry with the settlers doing those things. You know, I have hundreds of archived terrible war crimes on my computer. This is not the video for them, but Numbnuts here is so wrong.
So we really could someday soon have the tiki torch Jews will not replace us crowd and the Queers for Palestine people working together to elect the next Hitler. There's a North Carolina teenager who's been charged with plotting to drive through a synagogue to fulfill her life goal of killing as many Jews as possible, because a kid's got to have a dream. I'm just asking, why in the world would this be the dream of some kid in North Carolina? Why is it the dream of Dan?
Hold on, you're going off topic. We'll wait before that. I agree with you that shouldn't be the goal of any person here in America. That shouldn't be the goal of anybody, period. And that when we talk about generalizing, it's a very scary thing. But that happens with all groups, Bill Maher. And if you're really wondering about why is this her worry, why is this her dream, why is this what's on her mind? Well, Bill Maher, who are the people equating anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism? You, Bill Maher, you're doing that. So when you want to talk about girls like that are really upset at what Israel is doing, and how that's being conflated with what all Jewish people, the biggest people doing that are people like you, the Zionists, the Zionistes, and the government, the Netanyahus, the Smotriches, the Ben Hillel Smotriches, the Ben Gavirs. These are the people who inflame these things.
How would you respond to the charge that anti-Zionism is the new anti-Semitism?
Actually, the locus classicus, the best formulation of this, was by an ambassador to the United Nations, Abba Eban, Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, in an article that he wrote about 45 years ago, which I urge you to read, which appeared in an American Jewish journal, Congress Weekly, a major journal of the more liberal wing of the American Jewish community. He wrote an interesting article in which he was then UN ambassador from the State of Israel. He advised the American Jewish community that they had 2 tasks to perform. One task was to show that criticism of the policy, what he called anti-Zionism, that means actually criticisms of the policy of the State of Israel, were anti-Semitism. That's the first task. Second task, if the criticism was made by Jews, their task was to show that it's neurotic self-hatred, needs psychiatric treatment. And he gave 2 examples of the latter category. One was I.F. Stone, the other was me. So we have to be treated for our psychiatric disorders, and non-Jews have to be condemned for anti-Semitism. if they're critical of the state of Israel. It's understandable why Israeli propaganda would take this position. I don't particularly blame Abba Eban for doing what ambassadors are sometimes supposed to do, but we ought to understand it. There is no sensible charge. No sensible charge. There's nothing to respond to. It's not a form of anti-Semitism. It's simply criticism of the criminal actions of a state. Period.
Because we're Jews, it's being done in our name. We have to stand up and yell. It's not anti-Semitism to be against Zionism. On the contrary, we are attacked. Even when I went out in New York, my car tires were slashed, the windows, the mirrors broken, and so forth. But we don't care. We're going out anyway.
Not a proper Jew, the wrong sort of Jew, self-hating Jew. I was called that for the first time when I was 19 years old at university, where I made a speech in defense of a pro-Palestinian motion. One of the biggest problems we face is the treatment of our community as if it was just one monolithic block. This is the typical trope of all forms of racism. The Jewish community is not one undifferentiated thing. Its opinions vary, just like every other section of the community. And we find it deeply disturbing that the whole community is treated as one. A lot of us are anti-Zionist, and people need to realize that going back generations, Zionism was not the creed followed by all Jews, far from it. Marek Edelman, leader of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising in 1943, said that Jews should always be with the oppressed and never with the oppressor. I mean, for a section of the population whose history, much that's magical and wonderful, but so much that is to do with persecution, the fact that people with that history should identify with the oppressed in every setting seems self-evident to us. And that's where our support for justice for Palestinians comes in. We are identifying with the oppressed. And for anybody to suggest that it is the Israeli state which represents the oppressed in that conflict is pretty short-sighted and misguided.
Stop all arms trade with Israel now!
I saw in Auschwitz that if a dominant group wants to dehumanize others, so as the Nazis wanted to dehumanize me, these dominant group must first be dehumanized in a way themselves by diminishing their empathy due to propaganda and indoctrination, in order to be able to be as cruel as some were. Okay, but the same holds nowadays for Israel.
The harms of anti-Semitism and the fears of our Jewish brothers and sisters are real, and we must do everything we can to prevent discrimination, prejudice, hostility, or violence against Jews as Jews. I've cited a definition of anti-Semitism based on what's called the Jerusalem Declaration, because it's very precise in what anti-Semitism is. But there is confusion, I think, in this country as to what constitutes anti-Semitism. And I'd like you to tell us what the committee learned about whether or not certain types of acts constitute forms of anti-Semitism. For example, is it anti-Semitic to criticize Israel for acts of genocide, apartheid, war crimes, crimes against humanity in its prosecution of war against Palestinians in Gaza and in the actions on the West Bank?
Senator Senior.
Thank you for the question, Senator. I think your question really illustrates some of the challenges that we had in our committee deliberations. What I will say in response is that we heard several definitions of anti-Semitism in our committee. We realized that these definitions differ and was the cause of some division. And because our work was really focused on being able to identify issues of anti-Semitism in Canada, we really refrained from choosing what definition to go by. Instead, we decided to focus on the core issue of addressing what we heard from countless witnesses in terms of their experiences of anti-Semitism in Canada, whether it be in their work, in their communities, in their synagogues, at academic institutions, etc.
Senator Wu. Thank you for the answer. I'm not really interested in a definition, but I'm interested in knowing if it's anti-Semitic for me to quote the UN and dozens of human rights organizations which say that Israel is committing genocide, Israel's an apartheid state, is committing war crimes and crimes against humanity. This is an important question. I want to get some insight from you and the committee, because there are Canadians who are saying these things in good faith and in an attempt to try and stop the horror in Gaza and in the West Bank. Are they being anti-Semitic?
Thank you for your question. You're really asking me about the work of the committee, and I would want to respond to say that that is not the work that the committee focused on. It is not for me to determine whether you're being anti-Semitic, Senator. It really is based on, the work was really based on looking at the experiences of anti-Semitism. So that is not a question that we examined in our work. Thank you.
Senator Wu. You know, the public listening to this debate on a question as straightforward as mine, asking if accusations, documented accusations, supported accusations of Israel's war crimes and genocide and apartheid in Gaza and Palestine, that this chamber cannot say very clearly that this is not anti-Semitic. Can you imagine the chill that it puts on those who want to advocate for Palestinians? It appears that we are saying in this chamber, we don't know. We don't know whether we can say that there's a genocide taking place, because it would seem that this committee was unwilling to deal with the issue and is now leaving us with the ambiguity that those kinds of statements may well be anti-Semitic. So I'm going to try one more time to see if you can give us any guidance, because there are individuals, Canadians in universities, students, faculty, teachers, people working in unions, doctors, lawyers, who have been persecuted, who have lost their jobs, who have been reprimanded because they have made claims about Israel that were then said to be anti-Semitic and held up as anti-Semitic. What can we tell these people? That they are anti-Semites?
Senator Senior.
Senator Wu, I don't have a different response for you. I think I've answered the question as best as I could in context of the report that the committee did. Thank you.
Well, let me take a slightly different tack then. Do you feel that a vague definition of anti-Semitism, such as the one that the committee put a lot of emphasis on, the so-called IHRA definition, one which is very elastic, and that can be used to weaponize accusations of anti-Semitism against people who are critical of Israel, do you worry that these kinds of vague definitions may do more harm to the fight against anti-Semitism than benefit?
Senator Senior.
And this is the last question I will take on this matter, Madam Speaker. As I explained in my response earlier, we did not take a position on any definition, including the ERA definition or any other. We heard several definitions. We noted them in the report very clearly, and we thought that focusing on a definition over others would actually distract from the experiences of Jewish Canadians. So that is a direction that we took in our report. Thank you.
They're not the same. Leaving it there. Now you can move on to your Dan Bilzerian, but I really wanted to address what you tried pivoting from right there, because there's an underlying question you asked. That's a good question. Thank you for asking that. Keep your hand up more often. Ask more questions.
Bilzerian, who's running as a Republican to win a House seat in Florida. Who's Dan Bilzerian? Well, he's a professional douchebag who's attracted 30 million followers by doing this all day and posting it. Yes, he'll fit in fine with the current Congress. And Dan is fairly typical of the guys in the manosphere when he says, the only real battle in the world today that I see worth fighting is fucking, exterminating Israel. I mean, I would sign up tomorrow to go fucking put boots on the ground and go fucking kill Israelis. Why? Why is this asshole's life about two things? Getting more Viagra and exterminating the Jews. Israel was founded on the idea that anti-Semitism made a Jewish state unnecessary because Jews would never be safe without one. Can you honestly listen to this rhetoric and not see why that turned out to be true? If you don't have the right-wingers on your side, and you don't have the progressives, what do you have?
Okay. I don't have much to say about Dan Bilzerian. He's just another social media influencer who's trying to profit and make money. And yeah, he's a radical douchebag. I agree with Bill Maher there. He's a douchebag and he's a stupid dude and he's not somebody to support in any way. I agree with that. But if you're wondering why this is on his mind, it's because our country has supported this for so long. Just listen to Dan Bilzerian talk and I bet you'll probably hear that time and time again. I heard the TMZ video with Dan Bilzerian and he was talking about a lot about how he's going to stop the funding and such like that. So yeah, that's what's on his mind. And I don't know much about Dan Bilzerian beyond that. But your little Freudian slip there kind of messed up on something. Yeah, anti-Semitism making Israel unnecessary like you said there. Well, if it makes it necessary, if anti-Semitism makes it necessary to make a country to protect yourself, why would you do that thousands of miles away from anybody friendly from you, in the middle of a Muslim population? You put your country in the middle of that, and you start destroying villages immediately. Before you even make the country, you destroy like 600 villages. Oh, but all the Arabs attacked us. Yeah, they attacked you after you destroyed 600 villages, you...
If you don't have the right-wingers on your side, and you don't have the progressives, what do you have? What's more progressive than college, where professors now say things that would make Kanye wince? Osman Umgarji calls Zionists bloodthirsty animals. Who's he, the leader of ISIS? No, he's a professor right here in California at UC Irvine. And Candace Owens agrees with his assessment of Jews as animals because she says wherever they go, they bring their filth with them. Another professor, Hamid Dabashi, says of Israel's, they have a vulgarity of character that is bone deep and structural to the skeletal vertebrae of its culture. These are the kind of statements Goebbels would have read and said, no notes.
Silent crowd, Bill Maher. You're not really getting the laughs you're hoping for tonight, are you? But we could talk about that a little bit. You know what you're doing right now is called cherry picking. When it comes to Candace Owens' statement, millions of tourists across the world, Canada, Japan, Thailand, Cambodia, anywhere, a lot of them have the same stories of Israeli tourists. Just look it up yourself. Just go see all the headlines. Was Candace wrong? When we talk about the Talmud and the Kabbalah, is it wrong to say that, yeah, that's a bad part of culture? You know, there's some truth to that statement. When it comes to the statement listed right after that by somebody else, no, I disagree entirely. And I agree with Bill Maher on that. Yeah, there are some things that are just wrong. You're generalizing, you're being vague, you're not even expressing what you're upset about with the culture. Now, sandwiching all of that in between terrible shit, just like how you did in the beginning of this, it's a very sneaky, deceptive tool. I'll say that and move on.
I mean, where are the Jewish space lasers when you need them? Now, there are absolutely horrible things said about Muslims, too. That should also be, of course, roundly condemned, like Republican Congressman Randy Fine saying, If they force us to choose, the choice between dogs and Muslims is not a difficult one. That's awful. But it's not the same as they need to be nuked. And let's exterminate them. This is why Jewish people here and in Europe.
Randy Fine has said that mainstream Muslims should be destroyed. He has called for the deportation of all Muslims. He has called for the extermination of Palestinians, saying they're all terrible people. He has proudly celebrated the death of children who were sniped, congratulating the IDF soldiers who did it, literally calling the child a terrorist. He has also said the exact thing that Bill Maher brought up in that stupid statement.
In an interview, though, last month, you said this when asked about how to treat Gaza.
In World War II, we did not negotiate a surrender with the Nazis. We did not negotiate a surrender with the Japanese. We nuked the Japanese twice in order to get unconditional surrender. That needs to be the same here.
Did you really mean to say that the U.S. should use nuclear weapons against a people because there's something wrong with their culture?
Of course not. What I was saying is that we didn't negotiate with evil in World War II. We defeated the Germans. We defeated the Japanese using any means that were necessary. And the same needs to be done in Gaza. Nuking Gaza would be a terrible idea. The fallout would drift into Israel. It would kill the hostages. The point that I was making was,
but you're not worried about it
killing,
for example, women and children in Gaza who, the innocents?
I think war is a messy thing, and I think that when you defeat evil, you have to do what is necessary to do it. Israel cannot live next to a country that a huge percentage of the people wish to destroy it all of the time. They need to do whatever is necessary, and I don't know what those things are.
Let's exterminate them. This is why Jewish people here and in Europe now say they sometimes hide their identity, afraid that the Star of David will get them attacked, as has happened in almost too many places to mention lately. Leave your Star of David at home, but the keffiyeh, you can wear that anywhere. You can wear it to Fiddler on the Roof and you'll get applause. Jew hatred isn't just acceptable now, it's cool. Celebrities love it and make it trendy. It's the new Che Guevara t-shirt. The Islamophobia is just as bad argument is simply a false equivalency. Can you name a Jewish professor who talks about Muslims the way they get talked about? No. Anti-Jewish crimes, hate crimes, now outpace anti-Muslim hate crimes 9-1. It's not a contest, and I'm certainly not saying do more of the other. I'm just saying these are the numbers, the facts, the reality. There is a frothing anxiousness for the literal extermination of this one group. And Democrats, where are you? If any other minority group was being talked about this way, you'd break out the kenta cloth and have 10 benefit concerts. But because you see that so many of your brainwashed by TikTok constituents.
What you're doing here, Bill Maher, I've already explained. You're taking a bunch of events out of context. Even some of the events that you listed had Muslim stabbings in them. But whatever, I'm not going to get into it. Double Down News has a great video on that. All I will say here is Richard Spencer or many other people, many other people, completely supported by the government in Congress, like Randy Fine. You have many types of people with terrible rhetoric that it's allowed because it's not about Jewish people. It's about Muslims. But you asked a very important question earlier that explains all of this. The rise in Jewish persecutions might have something to do with conflating the actions of the country of Israel with all Jewish people and with Judaism. When you conflate those two things, you make a big issue. Now, who are the people doing that the most?
Now have an unfavorable view of Israel. You indulge them when you should be correcting them. You don't tell your woke idiots Israel isn't a colonizer or an apartheid state or committing genocide, and that if you brats had to spend a week anywhere in the Middle East other than Israel, you would understand what liberalism is not.
What you're missing there is when we talk about apartheid and how it's unequal human rights, we're not talking about for Americans in Israel. We're not talking about for white people or Chinese people. We're talking about for Muslims.
It was when the Palestinians in the West Bank realized that if they don't rise up, then their whole land, then the terminal disease of the settlements would eat them up.
הישראלים וכבישים בדרך כלל מתחת שנועדו לשרת את הפלסטינים.
This is the Palestinian city of Beit Jala, and the idea of this very expensive 2 tunnels and bridge is to shorten the distance for these settlers and make it possible for them to reach their settlements and Jerusalem in a matter of 8 minutes. It allows the Israelis to pretend that they have never left Israel, although they have left Israel of 1967 and gone to their illegal settlements on the Palestinian side. They are able to move from these 2 places, from Israel to the West Bank, without feeling that they have moved away from sovereign Israel.
אני נולדתי פה. זה לא מבחינתי החלטה. טוב, אני אבוא לגור בהתנחלות. גדלתי שם, זה לא... מבחינתי זה דבר אחד שלם. כל הדיבורים על מעבר לקו הירוק וכל זה, זה לא כאילו... אני לא רואה את זה, כי מבחינתי זה חלק מהחיים שלי. אני לא רואה את המחסום שאני עוברת כשאני נוסעת לירושלים, הוא לא קיים, כאילו...
كيف الحال؟ بتمتى من هان؟
300 متر هيك.
وكيف الوضع معهم السلطانيين هون؟
ممنوع يدخلوا مشيكة ومدين عليهم برابيج مي.
وهون وين موجودين هلا؟
شو؟
ممنوع ولا لا؟ بمنعوكم ولا لا؟ المستوطنين؟
بالشارع من هان للشيك.
مين بمنعوا؟
اليهود الجيش بتحاوم في الليلة.
כאשר יש 2 קבוצות שחיות בשטח אחד והן מובחנות בהגדרה באופן רשמי מבחינת זכויותיהם הפוליטיות, זכויותיהם הכלכליות, זכויותיהם המשפטיות, כן? והמפתח להבחנה הזאת הוא שרירותי לחלוטין, או השאלה האם נולדת לאם ערבייה או לא. איך אתה רוצה לקרוא לזה? זה מריח כמו אפרטהייד, זה נראה כמו אפרטהייד, זה נשמע כמו אפרטהייד, אז קוראים לזה אפרטהייד, כן, אז לא קוראים לזה בהולנדית, קוראים לזה, אתה יודע, בעברית ישראלית קוראים לזה כיבוש פלוס התנחלויות.
המשפט המודרני מבוסס על הרעיון שהוא חל טריטוריאלית. אם אני נוסע לאמסטרדם, ובאמסטרדם מותר, למשל, לעשן מריחואנה, אז גם אני, כשאני באמסטרדם, מותר לי לעשן מריחואנה. החוק העתיק, החוק הקדום, המשפט הקדום, היה מבוסס על מעמד אישי. כלומר, חוק אחד ליהודים, חוק אחד ללא יהודים, חוק אחד לנשים, חוק אחד לגברים. היום המשפט המודרני הוא טריטוריאלי. בגדה המערבית החזרנו את החוק הקדום. החלנו על אנשים לפי מוצאם הלאומי חוקים שונים.
אנחנו מדברים על 2 דברים. אחד זה אי שוויון בזכויות הפוליטיות, והשני זה אי שוויון בזכויות הכלכליות. היחס בהכנסה לגולגולת בין ישראל לבין הפלסטינים הוא בערך 1:20. אנשים לא מבינים שאי אפשר לקיים קהילה או קהילות כשהפער הוא כזה. פער כזה אפשר לשלוט רק בכוח. אבל עד שאנשים יבינו את זה, ימותו כאן הרבה אלפי אנשים.
תסביר לנו איזה תהליך שלום זה כשפה אוטובוסים מתפוצצים לנו ברחובות. פלסטינאים שאלו, תסביר לנו איזה תהליך שלום זה כשיש המשך של התנחלות ונוכחות עוד יותר מסיבית בכבישים שלנו, של מחסומים וכו'.
הערבים באו בכוונה לעשות פרובוקציה עם השמאלנים.
ופשוט חרשו פה בלי אישורים.
I have about 3,000 dunams, and in the mountain about maybe more than 300.
What do we see there, just behind
That's Esh Kodesh.
Have you been there?
Settlement.
Yes.
No, even though the land is mine.
It sits on your land?
Yeah, it's in my land.
Did you try talking to them?
No.
Why?
Because they won't listen to me.
מתי, איפה אנחנו נמצאים?
במטע זיתים.
ומי מטפל בזיתים האלה?
כרגע תושבי ג'לוד, נראה לי.
מה זאת אומרת כרגע?
כרגע.
וכעבור רגע?
שיכול להיות שיום אחד אנחנו נאבד את העצים האלה.
מי קבע שזה שלכם?
קודם כל אלוהים.
איך אנחנו יודעים שזה מה שאלוהים קבע?
כתוב את זה בתנ"ך, בצורה מפורשת.
כתוב בתנ"ך שהאדמה שבין אש קודש לג'לוד שייכת
בוודאי. כתוב את כל הארץ אשר אתה רואה. מה זה את כל הארץ? זה גם האדמות פה וגם ג'לוד וגם קוצרה, זה הכל.
My grandfather used to pick the olives while the Turkish headquarters under the tree. And my father picked the olives while the British headquarters over there. And where are the Turkish? Where is the British? Where are the Jordanians? All gone, and the land stayed here for the owners of the land. And that's what makes me optimistic anyway.
התבקשתי על ידי ראש הממשלה שרון להכין דוח על המאחזים הבלתי חוקיים בגדה המערבית. אני מניתי בין 95 למרץ 2005, שבו הגשתי את הדוח לממשלה, 105 מאחזים. ממצאי הדוח היו שמי שעומד מאחורי הקמת המאחזים האלה היא מדינת ישראל. מאחורי גבה של הממשלה, באופן בלתי חוקי, אבל תוך מעורבות של משרדי ממשלה כאלה ואחרים, מתנחלים, מועצות מקומיות בשטחים, אבל הם אלה שהקימו את המאחזים מכספי מדינת ישראל, והכל באופן בלתי חוקי. זאת אומרת, הבלתי חוקיות נהפכה לממוסדת. הממשלה לא יכלה להחליט על הקמת יישובים חדשים, בגלל שהאמריקאים קיבלו מאיתנו כנראה התחייבויות בעל פה, וראש ממשלה לא רצה להפר אותן, אבל יחד עם זה הרצון להקים התנחלויות היה קיים, ומצאו את הפטנט הזה, השיטה הזאת, שהממשלה לא יודעת שקמות התנחלויות על חשבון תקציב המדינה.
Sasson's recommendations were never implemented. While the government continued to finance settlements and outposts in the West Bank, Sharon had another plan to stifle international condemnation and domestic discontent.
השאלה ביחס לדמוקרטיה וההלכה בתורה היא מורכבת, כמו כל דבר בחיים. בוא נגיד ככה, מי שחי על פי תורת ישראל לא מתפעל מהדמוקרטיה. זאת אומרת, זו טכניקה של שלטון שקיימת היום. היא לא הייתה קיימת כמו שהיא לפני 200 שנה נניח. היא כנראה גם לא תהיה עוד 200 שנה.
אנחנו ניצבים היום בפני איזשהו פרדוקס בלתי פתיר, שאי אפשר יהיה לחבר את ארץ ישראל השלמה, את מדינת ישראל הדמוקרטית ואת מדינת ישראל היהודית. זה פשוט לא ילך. זאת אומרת, המשולש הזה, עד מהצלעות שלו תהיה חייבת להישמט. או שמדינת ישראל תהיה ריבונית בין הירדן לים, ואז היא לא תהיה יהודית, או לא תהיה דמוקרטית, כי הדמוגרפיה כמובן תכריע בעניין הזה, או שמדינת ישראל תצטמצם אל תוך גבולות 67 ותשמור על יהדותה והדמוקרטיות שלה מכמה בחינות אגב.
התנחלויות רק הולכות ומתחזקות. אז אם הם פה כבר 50 שנה, למה לא עוד 500?
תביט, אני היום בן 88. אתה יכול לומר, אם זה החזיק 88 שנה, למה לא 880? זה לא נימוק. אני לא במצב שאני יכול להגיד לך איך זה ישתנה ומתי. אבל אני יודע שזה לא יכול כך להימשך.
It is open today, June 7, 1967, after the Israeli troops had driven out of the new quarter of Jerusalem into the previously Jordanian-held old city of Jerusalem, which now lies clear on the other side of that gate.
This is Jerusalem Day, when Israelis mark their victory in the 1967 war, their seizure of the Western Wall and of East Jerusalem. International law envisions these streets as the capital of a Palestinian state. But those marching don't see it as an occupation. They've come to celebrate what they believe is Jewish ownership of the whole of this ancient city. What's striking is that these young people, many of whom have come from settlements on the West Bank, do not fear the police here. They come from the powerful settler movement, once a fringe extreme in Israeli public life. The ultra-nationalists are now increasingly influential. We meet Atara, who moved here with her parents from Texas 5 years ago.
And tell me about your two flags.
So this is a flag of the third temple, which we want to build, hopefully here on the Temple Mount.
Many people are holding the same flag. The Third Temple movement wants to demolish Al-Aqsa, the third holiest place for Muslims, and build a Jewish temple on the site. We're quickly surrounded by demonstrators.
What are they trying to do?
They want to put stickers.
And what do the stickers say?
Kahana was right.
They idolize Meir Kahane, a far-right American rabbi who moved to Israel and was convicted of multiple acts of terror. He's considered a founding father of the ultra-nationalist movement.
So what would you do to the Palestinians living here?
Here, like in the old city, leave or we'll kill you.
What would you do?
I think Islam is cancer, and you don't transfer cancer to another patient. That's not moral. You have to destroy cancer.
And what does destroy look like for you?
To either kill or re-educate all Muslims.
This man, Itamar Ben-Gvir, from the extreme right, makes similarly shocking statements. Once convicted for supporting far-right terrorist organizations, he's now the Israeli government's national security minister. And he started Jerusalem Day by unfurling the Israeli colors at Al-Aqsa. Israeli police describe isolated pockets of violence at the march. The Christian quarter of the old city was set upon by a group of Jewish demonstrators.
These streets should be absolutely packed with people. It's very strange being in the Jerusalem Old City and it being completely deserted. There should be shoppers, shopkeepers, religious pilgrims, and yet they can't be here. And they haven't been able to be here on any of the Jerusalem days because it is quite simply too dangerous for them. Now, we're told the vast majority of those marking this day, Jews across Jerusalem, are peaceful, but the ones who come here, the settler activists, they are bent on chaos. And those we speak to here say it's got worse and worse every year. The settler movement has been empowered. It is now at the heart of the Netanyahu government. More settlements have been greenlit in just the last year than were greenlit over the last 20 years. And Palestinians in this old city do not feel safe.
While many refused to engage with us, some, mostly American demonstrators, did agree to speak.
The uptick in settler violence on the West Bank is out of control. You must agree with that.
First of all, I'm not too into that, but I kind of do disagree. But, yeah.
And I mean, we were just over there. The level of intimidation by a lot of young, and this is why I was interested to talk to you, because you don't seem to want to fight, which is great.
I don't think that there's any point in violence.
Well, a lot of your friends here do seem to think there's a point in violence.
No, I might disagree with them.
Well, you could just walk along right over here.
Most of the people are not.
You see a bunch of signs where Jews were killed, right? And those were killed by Arabs.
Yeah, I can show you.
Now you have
right
one
here.
day that's Yom Yerushalayim, Flag Day for the Jews. So we come here to show this is our land, this is our city.
The basis of all this is that you're not from here. You came here from America, trying to displace people who were from here.
First of all, I'm not trying to displace nobody, and second of all, this is my country. I'm a Jew. God gave it to me.
Shaheen owns a kebab shop, but he can't open today.
Is it every year it happens? But
no, it's every year more and more and more.
We're talking to you now, and you've got a group walking down who are trying to stop us from being able to talk to you, I think. That's what they're doing. They're shouting so we can stop our interview.
We let them pass and Shaheen finishes his cigarette.
What do you feel when you see them walking?
It's pain for me. Yeah. It's pain for me. I want to live, you want to live, he wants to live, everybody wants to live.
In another corner of the city, a man watches from his window.
I asked this man how many people are inside. He said there are 7 of them in the house. He said he feels safe there, but he does not feel safe out in the street. And he described to us being spat on by a young activist out in the street. And that the IDF saw it happen and that they reprimanded those young boys.
But there are Jews here to protect Palestinians. Standing together works to foster understanding between Israelis and Palestinians.
Stand with our bodies against the settler violence here against the Palestinian community of Eastern Jerusalem, and we will not let this violent day affect the population here. And we're ready to get hit. We don't want them to get hit. This is our responsibility as Jews.
But you're Jewish.
Yeah.
It's your day too.
No.
No, you don't feel that way.
It's a day of occupation. I think that justice must come to all people in this land, and the occupation cannot persist.
Do you think that's a majority view in Israel?
It will be.
Standing Together is a movement built on the hope of coexistence. Attitudes across Israel to a two-state solution have hardened, especially since October 7th and the devastation in Gaza. These activists are willing to put their own lives on the line for the promise of a different kind of Israel.
They started shouting now because they know that we're trying to speak and they're trying to drown it out. I mean, what do you feel as an Israeli when you see this?
Palestinians here are my brothers and sisters, and I will stand with them.
We're talking about for the other side of the coin. We're talking about the plight of the people being oppressed over there. And what we have to understand is 80 years of this, one side has had tanks, one side has had AK-47s, one side has had actual rockets, and the other one has had bathtub-made missiles. And the other side has had slingshots and rocks. And then over time gotten actual weapons and slowly built up a way to fight back. But we have to understand that the side with the power to actually make things done right is Israel and not the Palestinians. The people that are oppressing the other side more are Israel oppressing the Palestinians. Palestinians are not oppressing the Israelis more. You have 6,000 deaths in 15 years from 2008 to 2023. 6,000 Palestinian deaths in the West Bank. You have 1,000 throughout all of Israel, Israeli deaths to violence. And that violence is mostly coming from settlers going onto other people's land. You have hundreds of millions of Americans here that would say, oh, I protect your right to shoot someone if they go into your house. But do you feel that way for Palestinians with Israelis going to their house and their farmland and stealing their sheep and stealing their olive trees and shit? A lot of people don't. The media's trained people not to.
All the people likely running for president now on the Democratic side want it known they don't take money from AIPAC, the Israeli lobby, a stance which gives permission to actual anti-Semites to say, see, we're right about Israel. That's a dirty money from a dirty country. Oh, please. You take money from crypto and factory farmers and big tech, from Diddy and Weinstein and Epstein, but AIPAC is too far? Let me just say this to all who ask me, why are you harder on the Democrats than you used to be? Until you fix this whole issue, stop asking me.
Oh, and you end your video without the claps that you usually get at the end. Probably because you didn't get the claps that you were hoping for, so you wanted to end it in a still nice dramatic way. Clap, clap, clap. Good job. Good video, Bill Maher. Now let's end off on your last little piece here. Some of those people that you listed are still pro-Israel and staunchly. Pritzker, Cory Booker, many others I wasn't looking at, but I just saw those two quickly and I was like, what are you doing here, buddy? But Bill Maher, I just want to say you're very deceptive and well with words, but to people who know this subject, you are a bullshitter, you are a con artist, you are a hack of a TV show, man.